I would consider myself a person that gets easily distracted. I discover new ideas and I follow them down the rabbit hole, and guess what happens? Just picture this. I get a grand idea, I tell myself that I'm gonna follow a goal, only for my attention to divert elsewhere. Then I get another idea, tell myself that this is the solution, and you get the gist. Now that was the case until 2 months ago when I decided to start a new practice. Along with many other benefits, I'm starting to develop a mental clarity that I have not really had before. I'm not really getting distracted like I used to, and as cliche as it sounds, I can almost catch those thoughts before they distract me. Now, how did I reach this point? My dearest viewer, it was simple. I sat down for an hour a day doing absolutely nothing. Now, I hear you thinking behind the screen, how could doing nothing possibly make my life better? Allow me to show you how boredom has improved my life by making me more peaceful, productive, and...
Growing up, there was this statement, I think it was Pascal, he said, all of man's problems arise because he cannot sit by himself in a room for 30 minutes alone.
One of the first things I started noticing was my sense of inner stillness. The stillness allowed me to really take a deep look at the content that was constantly bubbling up in my mind. It was like I could put the whole world on pause and just catalog through my memories and emotions.
Really, all it is the art of doing nothing, okay? And it's important because I think when we grow up, right, there's all this stuff happening to you in your life. And some of it you're processing, and some of it you should probably think a little bit more about and work through, but you don't have time. So it gets buried in you, and it's all these preferences and judgments and unresolved situations and issues. And it's like your email inbox. It's just piling up, email after email after email that's not answered, going back 10, 20, 30, 40 years. And then when you sit down to meditate, those emails start coming back at you. Hey, what about this issue? What about that issue? Have you solved this? Did you think about that? And you just have to sit there as those emails go through one by one. You work through each of them until you get to the magical inbox 0.
Doing absolutely nothing has also helped me overcome a lot of stress in my life. Intense stress can cause me to have intrusive thoughts which can override my thinking patterns. The first reaction is to try to avoid them, but that never works. Now, guess what happened when I actually spent an hour with those intrusive thoughts? With complete calmness, I surrendered to the emotion, I worked through it, and planned a solution. All of a sudden, I had so much control over those intrusive thoughts. I couldn't really believe how simple this was, but yet it was obvious. I've always thought that I needed more information in my life to make me happier, but what if I actually needed less? Okay, so you might be skeptical at this point. How does doing nothing make you more productive? The answer actually has to do with the infamous molecule dopamine.
The way that your body uses dopamine is to have a baseline level of dopamine, meaning an amount of dopamine that's circulating in your brain and body all the time. And that turns out to be important for how you feel generally, whether or not you're in a good mood, motivated, etc. And you also can experience peaks in dopamine above baseline. Please remember this, that when you experience something or you crave something really desirable, really exciting to you, very pleasurable, what happens afterwards is your baseline level of dopamine drops.
So what Dr. Huberman is saying is that when we have high and frequent spikes in dopamine, such as when we're eating a lot of sweets or when we're scrolling through our phone for a long time, it'll actually lower our dopamine baseline, which will then give us less energy and less motivation to do other things. Now, this makes complete sense when we recall those moments of having intense pleasure. There's usually a dip of energy and motivation afterwards. So I'm sure you get the point by now. By abstaining from all stimulation for an hour a day, I allowed my baseline levels of dopamine to go up so that I had more motivation to do things throughout the day.
First of all, boredom is a rare experience for modern humans because we're constantly distracting ourselves from the present moment, and we have an infinite number of ways to do that. But boredom is really, I think, an important and necessary experience. And I think that is an experience out of which we can have a lot of creative initiative.
Because otherwise, if there's an infinite number of choices, anything can be anything. You know, it's like it's sometimes more choices is not better.
I'm gonna end this video with an analogy. When people go blind, they can experience something called Charles Bonnet syndrome, a neurological disorder that causes people to hallucinate. Scientists speculate that a lack of input into the retina causes an overactivity in the visual cortex. A lack of input into the eyes can cause the brain to overreact and create its own visual input. Well, I think the same thing happens when you train your mind to sit in complete boredom. Instead of expecting creativity and fun from the outside, your mind starts to create its own. You start to hallucinate. You eventually become reliant on your own supply of ideas and topics.
So limiting your palate to something manageable forces you to solve problems in a different way.
You actually want to, again, rest your mind. You want to learn how to settle into your mind. Now, I look forward to solitary confinement. You leave me alone for a day, it'll be like the happiest day I've had in a while. And that is a superpower that I think everybody can attain.